I came back to fix up the old hunting lodge my dad built with his own hands only to find a stranger living inside, claiming it was now HOA property. She changed the locks, replaced our furniture with yoga mats, and when I demanded she leave, she called the cops on me for trespassing in my own damn house. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about a cabin. It was a war for my family's legacy. The old gravel road wound up the mountain like a scar. When I reached the clearing, the lodge looked smaller than I remembered, but still solid, still mine. My father built it from ponderosa pine, one beam at a time, with me and my brother Lance. I stepped out of my truck, feeling that old mountain air, thin, clean, honest. I pulled the brass key from my pocket, the same one Dad gave me when I shipped out for basic training, but when I turned it in the lock, nothing. The door just pushed open. Inside, the smell hit me first. Lemon polish lavender. Not the old scent of pine and smoke I grew up with. My father's coat rack. Gone. The armchair where he used to read gone. In their place were yoga mats, flyers for mindful hiking, and a corkboard covered in HOA announcements. Then I saw her. A woman in her 50s, hair tied tight, dressed like she was about to teach a spin class at a country club. She didn't flinch when she saw me, just frowned like I was interrupting her routine. "Can I help you?" she said. I stared at her, my voice steady. "Yeah, you can start by telling me who the hell you are and what you're doing in my house." She crossed her arms, leaning against the counter like she owned the place. "This is the community lodge," she said with that smile only people who've never been told no can manage. "I'm Karen Whitfield, property manager for the Mountain Vista Estates Homeowners Association." I laughed, but it came out dry. "There's no HOA up here, never has been. This land's been in my family for 60 years. She shrugged, her tone syrupy. "Things change. We reclaimed this property as part of the community greenbelt. It was abandoned. We've improved it." I looked around. My father's tools. Lance's fishing gear gone. "You just decided it was yours." She lifted her chin. "We made it useful." I felt my temper rise. "You had no right to touch a damn thing here. This is private property. Now pack up and get out." Her face hardened. Then she reached for her phone. "You're threatening me," she said, her voice suddenly trembling for an imaginary audience. "I'm calling the sheriff." 40 minutes later, a deputy showed up. Karen played the frightened victim, perfectly clutching her pearls while pointing at my hammer like it was a weapon. The deputy, tired and cautious, said it was a civil matter. He couldn't make her leave. When I got back in my truck, she stood on the porch smiling, that smug little smile, the kind that sticks under your skin like a splinter. The next morning I came back and found a giant silver padlock on my door and a bright red notice taped to the window. Unauthorized entry to HOA property. Fine $250. My jaw literally dropped. She wasn't just squatting, she was fining me for existing. That's when I went to the county clerk. The woman behind the desk pulled up the parcel records, and sure enough, there it was. Mountain Vista Estates HOA had filed a new map. My 36 acres were labeled Common Green Belt. It was like my family's land had been erased with a single dotted line. I called a lawyer. He sighed when I explained. "These HOAs pull this kind of thing. You can fight it, but it'll take months, maybe years, cost you a fortune." That night, I sat in a cheap motel staring at the ceiling. My daughter called worried. "Dad, maybe let it go. Sell the land. You don't need this." I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to listen. I was tired, angry. For a moment, I actually wondered maybe I was the one clinging to the past. But later, sitting in my truck overlooking the lodge, I saw lights glowing through the window. I lifted my old binoculars and froze. Inside, Karen was leading a yoga class, laughing calm, graceful on my floorboards in front of my fireplace. A dozen women stretched where my brother used to sit, and just like that, the doubt evaporated. No, this wasn't about nostalgia anymore. This was war. The next morning, I started digging. I spent 2 days buried in county records until I found something everyone else had missed: an easement from 1958. My father had granted the county access for a shared well on the condition that his property would always retain legal road access. That road, the HOA called private, it wasn't. It was mine by right. I called an old Army buddy Tanner, now a licensed surveyor. When I explained, he actually laughed. "Rick, that easement is dynamite. Send it over. I'll back you up with certified maps." But I wasn't done. I bought a drone, started filming everything, her yoga classes, her donation box, her maintenance guy hauling my father's old rocking chair into a truck. Theft. On camera. Then I installed a tiny motion camera inside a birdhouse facing the porch. 2 days later, I had footage of Karen pocketing cash from her own Friends of the Lodge box. Another friend, Gus, retired electrician, helped me find where her power came from. Turns out she'd tapped into the HOA's main grid running stolen electricity into my lodge. Illegal as hell. Piece by piece I built my case. And then I found the crack that would break her. In the annexation vote paperwork, the one where the HOA claimed my land, there were 5 required signatures. Only 4 were there. The missing one belonged to a woman named Lena Brooks. I found her number and called. She sounded tired, scared even. I explained everything, the fake vote, the theft, the fraud. There was a long silence. Then she said, "What time do you need me there?" We sent Karen a formal cease and desist letter, 48 hours to vacate. Instead of complying, she sent an email blast to the entire HOA. She painted me as an unhinged ex-military nutcase trying to destroy their community. She declared me officially trespassed from all HOA properties, including apparently my own land. That was the last straw. I wasn't going to fight her through lawyers anymore. I was going to take her kingdom apart, one brick at a time. The showdown came that Saturday. Karen had rented out my land for a wedding rehearsal. Tables, music, fairy lights strung across the pergola she'd built on top of my brother's old spruce trees. I watched from my truck down the road as guests arrived in pastel dresses and rented suits. At 4:55 p.m., Tanner pulled up his truck and blocked the only road in. Behind him, Earl, another old friend, retired sheriff, parked his sedan to seal the exit. Lena followed me on foot, nervous but resolute. I slipped through the trees to the power junction I'd found earlier. A single flip of that switch and darkness. The music died mid-beat. Guests gasped. "What's happening?" someone shouted. Karen's voice rose above the noise, sharp as ever. "It must be a fuse." Douglas, check the line. I stepped out of the woods. "No need," I said. "The power's gone because the owner of this property just shut off the stolen electricity you've been using." Every head turned. Karen's face drained of color when she saw Lena beside me. Then Tanner and Earl stepped into view down by the road. "You're trespassing," she screamed, grabbing her phone again. "I'm calling the police." "Good idea," I said. "Maybe they'll arrest the real trespasser this time." I turned to the father of the bride, handed him a folder with my deed, the legal maps, and photos of her theft. "Sir, I'm sorry your event got caught in this, but this land doesn't belong to her, HOA. It belongs to me. You've been scammed." He read the documents, jaw tightening. Behind him, the guests whispered, glaring at Karen. I nodded toward the lodge. "You're welcome to use the cabin for the rest of the evening, free of charge." It was checkmate. The wedding party packed up and followed me uphill. I went live on the Mountain Vista Facebook page, showing the empty pergola and Karen standing there in shock. If you're wondering why the event's been canceled, I said it's because the HOA president was throwing private parties on stolen land. The comments lit up instantly. Karen's empire was collapsing in real time. She screamed something about restraining orders and stormed off down the road. A week later came the HOA board meeting. The place was packed. Every neighbor Karen had bullied showed up, people she'd fined for flags for parked trucks for the color of their mailboxes. The air buzzed with tension. Karen sat up front, pale but trying to look in control. First on the agenda, she started, is the motion to ban Mr. McCaffrey from all. Actually, Lena interrupted, standing up. "You're not running this meeting anymore." The room fell silent. Lena laid out the missing signature, the fraudulent annexation, the misuse of HOA funds, the theft of utilities. Then she turned to me. "Rick, would you—" I walked up, plugged in the projector. The drone footage rolled Karen directing her handyman to steal my father's furniture. Then the video of her pocketing donation money. Then the illegal power tap. The crowd erupted. She tried shouting over them, voice cracking, "He's lying. He's not even a resident." That was my cue. She's right, I said. I'm not a resident. Because you built your homes on my land. Gasps rippled through the room. I explained how Tanner had uncovered the truth. The developer who built Mountain Vista never completed the land transfer. The holding company still owned the ground beneath their streets, and 2 weeks earlier, I'd bought that company. I turned to Karen. So, technically I'm not your neighbor, Karen. I'm your landlord. The room exploded. People cheered, shouted, demanded her removal. One man, an old veteran she'd once fined, stood up and yelled, "I make a motion to kick her out permanently." The vote was unanimous. Karen sat frozen eyes glassy while the empire she'd built on arrogance crumbled to dust. She tried one last smear campaign online, called me a crook, a sociopath, even filed bogus complaints with the county. But the evidence was already public. The reporter had aired the story, and the DA pressed charges for trespassing, theft, and wire fraud. The last time I saw that deputy, he handed me the warrant. "Funny how things turn out," he said. I stood there on the porch of my father's lodge, the mountain air still and clean again, the same way Lance used to say it scrubbed your soul. I didn't smile, didn't cheer. I just breathed. Karen's downfall wasn't victory. It was balance restored. Because sometimes justice doesn't roar. It hums quietly through the pines when the mountain finally remembers who it belongs to.